Purple vein, purple vein. Yeah. There we go. Nailed it. Freaking. I've been told that I sound like a combination between Fergie and Jesus. Now the acoustics in here are, conducive to what I'm trying to do. Mom and Dad are sleeping in the next room. I'm trying not to wake them up. But I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, I will try and make that our, weekly bit intro theme song, Purple Vein. All right, but so let's get to the film review on the Vikings from last week's game in Atlanta, where they took on the Dirty Birds and beat them fairly handedly. 20-10, I believe. Falcons got a late, garbage time touchdown with under 2 minutes to go. Really a 20-3 game, but officially a 20-10 game. As I was reviewing the film, it was one of the most complete, if not the most complete team game that the Vikings have played all year. Literally every facet, unit-wise, offensive line, running backs, quarterback play, secondary, coaching, all that stuff, all the categories, all the different units. Every single one of them played well. Some played better than others, obviously, but every single one of them had a good game. I don't know that I've seen that in any of the previous 11 to 12 games that the Vikings played this year that I graded film on. So that was the overall best take from it. Another difference from last week's game to this week's game was the referees. The referees this week made just about every call right, regardless of which way it went. They were fantastic. And it's, it seems like people only rip on the refs and talk about the refs when they're not doing a good job. You know me, I try to go both ways. I try to keep it real. And so I am going to point out when the refs do a good job, as well as ripping on them when they stink. But let's, enough talk about refs, more actual football talk. Okay, so I'm thinking that since there wasn't a super lot to be, negatively or overly critical of in this last week's Viking games, that we should be able to get through these grades, on the film fairly quickly. And I'll give you my final thoughts on where the Vikings are at. And then we'll get into, we'll officially wrap up the Purple Vein. And then work our way into the spew while still technically somewhat in Balls on Fire yet, kind of, sort of. So let's start at the coaching staff, where, when we win, it's glaringly obvious on all these, all my reviews, that when we win, either Zimmer, head coach Zimmer, offensive coordinator Norv Turner, or both of them coach a very good game. And this week was no different. Zimmer ended up with 10 pluses, 3 minuses, so a +7 performance on Norv, and then a 21 pluses to only 3 minuses. That for Norv. Zimmer had the +7. Norv had a 21/3 for a +18. So Norv called a very, very good game. Heavy on the run, but that was what the game called for. We controlled time of possession and total plays so much that was the best way to counter, to help out our defense and counter the fact that we're going up against a team that's top 10, top 5 in the league in rushing, and top 10, top 5 in the league in passing. They were like the 4th overall offense heading into that game. Good at both the run and the pass. So one of the best things you can do is to have an offensive game plan where you're eating up clock, picking up first downs, running the ball effectively, and controlling that time of possession. and then also not turning the ball over, which I believe the Vikings did only once, but that's not a coaching thing. We'll get to that in a moment. But so both Zimmer and Norv Turner coached a great game this past Sunday against Atlanta. The offensive line as a unit had 22 pluses overall throughout the game, where, like I said, as a unit, they did their job. No minuses there, but we will get to minuses individually, primarily one individual. If you listen to the show regularly, I'm sure you can guess who it is. It's the same guy every week, but we'll get to that. So then on to the big name that everybody cares about, Teddy Bridgewater. Now you look at his statistics from the game: under 200 yards, an interception. I don't recall, did he have one touchdown pass? Can't recall. But, I mean, if he had a touchdown, it wasn't more than one. I know that because AP had at least, AP got them both. So Teddy finished with under 200 yards, no touchdowns, one pick. He'll have a terrible quarterback rating on that likely, but his completion percentage was good. The offense was effective. Could have scored more points, but the offense was still effective in moving the ball, scoring points, controlling time of possession, all that stuff I mentioned earlier. And for the most part, he was very decisive, which is one thing I've been harping on him on all year. Is making the right decision at the right time. He's not necessarily making the wrong decision very often, but he's not progressing off of, what he wanted to do to what is open and taking it. Where this last week he was actually fairly good at that. Effective with the three. Norv did a great job of setting him up for success, calling almost all 3-step and 5-step quick, pass plays, or the play is designed to get the ball out of Teddy's hands quickly, making it easier on him, making it easier on the offensive line. And it was very effective. Like I said, it didn't get a ton of yards, didn't score a ton of points, but it won us the football games. And the fact is, every time Teddy has passed for under 200 yards this year, which is I want to say 6 times, which is a crazy high number. He's played 11 games. He's thrown under 200 yards 6 times. He's only thrown over 200 yards 5 times. A normal, good starting quarterback in the NFL, you would change that number to under 200 yards and over 300 yards. But that's where Teddy's at, So realize that, digest that, understand that, taper expectations and also judgment based on that. But overall, my grading of the film, Teddy had one of his most solid games of the season. He had 15 pluses to only 6 minuses. Only one of those minuses was bad, that being the interception inside the red zone. Definitely, field goal territory, so it cost us a minimum of 3 points. I believe it was on 2nd down, too, where he didn't need to be forcing a touchdown pass that wasn't there. But that was in the first half, recovered well. But 15 pluses to only 6 minuses, a +9 for Teddy on the game. A +9 for a quarterback, the way I grade film, is an excellent game. And only having 6 minuses is an excellent game as well. So, moving on to AP/the running backs. The running backs as a group were +25, 29 over 4. 3 of those 4 minuses came from fullback Zach Line, who was 4 over 3 +1. Jerick McKinnon was a +4. Asiata was a +1. AP only had 1 minus to 20 pluses, a +19 performance from the Beast. AP, all day, baby. Can't wait to see you do that again, hopefully this Sunday, in person, thanks sis, against the Seattle Seahawks. So the running backs as a group, even outside of Adrian Peterson, including Jerick McKinnon, played well. Zach Line blocked pretty well, and he's a receiving threat, fairly decent out of that fullback position as well. But there are still run blocks that he is failing on. And if you're wondering who, if you ever watch a run play and go, well, that didn't work, wonder why that happened. If Zach Line was on the field, he's the second option. He's your second guess, okay? There's an offensive lineman that's always your first guess, but we'll get to that in a moment. So quarterback play +9, running backs +25 were fantastic. Wide receivers not very involved in this game plan, but they didn't do too much to hurt us, and when they were involved, they got the job done for the most part. Diggs ended up with 2 pluses and a penalty, which ultimately gets counted as a minus in final grade, so he was a +1. And Mike Wallace drew 2 penalties that got him an overall +2 grade. No other wide receiver even registered a plus or a minus during offensive play in my grading. So the wide receivers were 4/1, a +3. Like I said, fairly uninvolved, but still a +3 grade. Tight ends were big running the ball, as well as converting some third downs and moving the chains in this game as well. Rudolph continues to play well as of late. 6 pluses, 2 minuses, a +4 game overall. Rhett Ellison 3/1, +2, and Pruitt getting 2 pluses and some run blocking. So your tight ends as a unit were 11/3, a +8. That's excellent production from your tight ends. So the running backs, tight ends really shined. Quarterback shined as well. Wide receivers were okay, but like I said, not asked to do too much. Then we get to the final thing on offense, which everybody always brings up here in Minnesota, and I'm surrounded by idiots for the most part, is the offensive line. Everybody, all they say is our offensive line stinks. We don't have a good offensive line. Teddy gets sacked all the time, thus we don't have a good offensive line. Our offensive line is actually fairly good. Our offensive line is around the midway mark in the NFL, maybe just above, just barely in the top half of the league. We are not one of the 15 worst offensive lines in football. There's 32 teams, and I guarantee you there are 16 offensive lines that are worse than the Vikings, if not a few more. But because Teddy gets sacked for holding the ball way too freaking long and not progressing through his reads quicker and finding the guy that I'm yelling at my TV screen for him to throw the ball to, 3 seconds before he throws it away. No, because of that, everybody says our O-line stinks. We've got one of the best running attacks in all of the league, and yet our running back gets all the credit for that. That none of that running the football success could possibly because we have a good offensive line. That's inconceivable. I don't think that word means what you think it means. But I am telling you, as a football freaking expert, that the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is not that bad. It's actually fairly decent. It's in the top half of the league, and they proved that once again against another very, very good defense in the Atlanta Falcons. It's not the best defense we've played all year, but it's a good defense. Look at the statistics. Look at the team rankings. They're actually a good defense. But so here's the offensive line breakdown. I told you, as a unit, they had 22 pluses, no minuses. Now we get to the individual grades. So left tackle, Matt Khalil, great game. 2 pluses, only 1 minus from your left tackle. That's great. An overall +1. Center, Joe Cheeseburger. Double cheeseburger. Bacon double cheeseburger. He had the best overall game for the offensive lineman. 4 pluses, 2 minuses, a +2. Right guard Mike Harris, 3 pluses, 2 minuses, a +1. So 3 guys right there in the pluses, okay? Then we get to our right tackle, rookie right tackle, TJ Clemmings, not one of his better games. 1 plus, 2 minuses, and a penalty, which counts as a third minus, for an overall of a -2. So not terrible, but not as good as his teammates, underperforming a little bit. And then if you'll notice, I skipped a position. And if there is ever a run play or a pass play that doesn't work, this is your number one person to expect to be liable for the result of that play, and that is our starting left guard, Brandon Fusco. Week after week after week, I tell you guys, if you're a regular listener, you probably get it by now.